Okay. Yeah, you have 8
already.
participants already. It's not yet time, Sha.
Queen, oh. Sorry, I'm already on. I forgot.
Oh. Good afternoon, my dear.
Oh, I think we have about a minute to go. I think we'll just time to try to do as much as we can. You not put my Ah, uh, on the screen. Ah, okay, good. So that yes, okay. I will come. Yes, I think I will.
Mute.
Yes, I'm happy. Professor Ladipo Odamodekun is right here. Uh, to welcome you,
They're not
Professor
talking
Mrs.
yet.
Professor Mrs. Aro Olubo. You are most welcome.
Yeah, yeah, please.
Dr.
Inside that place where you used to look for something. Please hold
Hearing your
on.
voice, Dr.
Yeah.
I, the Director Institute of Education is right here with us. Joe Beromosele, welcome. Our president here. So we expect others will join us. Once again, I want to welcome all of us to this meeting. As we said earlier, this event, this webinar, as by the grace of the Vice Chancellor, University of Benin, approved the hosting of this event, which marks the 2021 edition of the African Day of Administration and the Public Service. The whole essence is to galvanize conscious in a political dispensation. We find that the public bureaucracy serves as the engine room. They are the implementers of public policies that any responsible government will put together. And to that extent, we have also seen that for quite some time now, there have been complaints about the bureaucracy and its essence. So maybe some of the products of it will be that at the end of the day, I'm able to forge the way forward in ensuring that African public administration serves the purpose for which it is meant. So once again, I want to welcome all of us to this event. And the topic for discourse is representative democracy, diversity management, and the quest for representation in Nigeria's public service. Implications for service delivery. It's quite a
You've not, okay, my charger. The charger of the phone. And the charger of the phone. They've not started. See, African.
They have lined up the people that
No,
really
they're not even
matter.
talking. That's what I said. Are you sure they're
That we
starting?
do to this discourse. As I've said earlier, Professor Oladi Pupo Adamolekun has been everything, especially when we talk about public administration.
Hello?
Administration. And the other discussant, Professor Tunji Olaopa, is presently of Leeds University. He's also known as Arrowhead
School of
Government
Government.
and Public.
Has also served
public service.
Then we also have as another discuss
Professor Austin Oyekelegbe,
Faculty of Social Sciences.
Dean Faculty of Social Sciences.
Has been a resource person nationally and internationally. And it's a public administration scholar to be called. As I said earlier, we're expecting the Federal Character Commission to join in. And we're also expecting the African Association for Public Administration and Management based in Kenya to join in. So first and foremost, the pattern we're going to take, we're going to ask Professor Adamolekun to start. All I've just done is to provide some kind of preamble. I will also, from time to time, give an indication of what we need to do. At the end of the presentations and the discussions, we will also have opportunity for questions, issues that can be raised that will help us move further. It is envisaged that this will be an annual event, especially now that we have the support of the present administration of the University of Benin under the leadership of Professor Lilian Salami. We also expect our representative to join us shortly by way of good business. But in the meantime, we know that she's always very, very busy. So we're going to move ahead at the appropriate time. It will give us
I don't want to be at the center. Don't be at the gallery. Okay. Camera is together. Put it slant now. Are they talking already?
You can't see them.
I can't hear see anything now.
So, profile of Professor Ladipo Adamolekun, our lead speaker for this afternoon. Professor Ladipo Adamolekun was born in Iju, Akure North, Ondo State, and I think after his sojourn, he has retired back to the countryside. So most times I read his expositions in
There's a clip with someone.
I see that it's addressed Akure, Iju, Akure North in the state.
He had his secondary school education at Oyemekun Grammar School, Akure, and Krakow at the University of
University of Ife.
Yeah,
Now,
okay.
Awolowo University, and of course, the doctorate degree in politics from Oxford University in England. See what I mean when I say he has seen it all. Professor Adamolekun has served on many Nigerian federal and state government committees, councils, and boards dealing with issues in the field of public affairs. At the international level, he has been involved in providing analytical and advisory services focusing on governance. Hello? Yeah.
He's trying to the audio. I'm hearing.
Professor Adamolekun. Yes, he's there. Yes, he's the one. Yes. Yes, so that, okay, let me just give a minute. Let me quickly round off his profile. Then, okay, I will do that now. Okay, all right. So I've just been, okay. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just doing a brief bio sketch of yes, Professor Aro here. So I'm Dr. Ekoswe acting director of the Institute of Public and Extension Services. We are hosting this 2021
African Day of Administration and the Public Service.
I was just saying
that our
speaker, Professor
Adamolekun, in a short while, we have the floor. Before then, I'd like to add
Professor Adamolekun is widely has published extensively on politics and public
administration in Africa, and many of us have used this material and we continue to read this material.
It constantly
features in on national He has won many honors and distinctions at home and abroad over these years. He is a recipient of the Nigerian National Order of Merit, NNOM, and this is the country's highest prize for academic and intellectual attainment. Professor Adamolekun is married with children and is presently based in his hometown. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Professor Ladipo Adamolekun to mount the podium and take us through his wealth of experience in this other area, in the area under discourse. Other speakers after him, I think I will introduce them, but first, very quickly, let me talk about the next speaker after him, which is Professor Adetunji Olaopa. As I said earlier, he's a retired federal permanent secretary and presently a professor of public administration and public policy. He joined the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Luke School, Jos, in February 2020. He is a University of Ibadan trained political scientist. Olaopa holds a doctorate degree in public administration. As hinted earlier, he is founder and executive vice chairman at the Ibadan School of Government and Public Policy, Bodija, Ibadan. He joined the Federal Public Service in Lagos in 1988 and has worked through several areas. He served as permanent secretary in 5 notable ministries, which include the career management, was Ministry of Labor and Productivity, Youth Development and Communication Technology. In all this, he made his input in framing several institutional frameworks and several models for productivity, for Nigeria's productivity. Professor Olaopa's areas of technical expertise include governance and institutional analysis and development, public sector reform and restructuring, design and management of civil service reform and administrative reform strategies, amongst others. As a researcher, trainer, and prolific writer, Professor Olaopa has authored a dozen major books, 30 monographs, and 1 co-author book, 20 articles in peer-reviewed journals, and several essays, chapters, and articles in conference proceedings. He is presently a member of the Governing Council of the first technical university at Ibadan, as well as Lee City University, Ibadan. Professor Olaopa is a recipient of many honors and awards, including the 2020 Dr. Kwame Nkrumah African Distinguished Public Service Order of Merit Award, amongst others, amongst others. Professor Olaopa is married and blessed with 3 children and a grandson. The last but certainly not the least is Professor Austin Ikebe, a distinguished professor and presently the Dean of Public Administration. The Dean of Professor Austin Ikebe teaches political and public policy at the University of Benin. He has enjoyed fellowships abroad and commissioned researches on important national concerns. Professor Ikebe has researched and published extensively on local, national, corporate, and public sector governance, as well as conflict and peace studies. you will agree with me that the team we have put together will surely do justice to the topic for discourse. We therefore enjoin all of us to participate, listen carefully, raise issues that will help move the Nigerian state forward. Once again, I want to thank all of us for joining in. As others join in, we'll try as much as possible to make the necessary contribution. So at this point, I'd like to call on Professor Ladipo Adamuleku to start the ball rolling. Host, please. Professor Adamuleku, please unmute yourself and let us listen to your words of wisdom and scholarly attainment. Thank you very much. Okay. Hello. Yeah. Professor Adamuleku, please. You have the floor. Hello. Or do I need to unmute myself?
I'm hearing now. Yeah, no, I'm muted.
Hello, Prof. Hello.
I think you should tell him to unmute. I think we should tell Prof to unmute himself.
Prof, please unmute yourself so that we can hear you.
Please unmute yourself. Hello.
I can hear them, but I'm not hearing Prof.
Are you hearing him? I'm not hearing Prof.
No, I'm hearing them. I'm hearing my people, but the prof.
He's talking.
Okay, that's Yam.
Yes.
That's Yam. Host to mute.
Is it the one hosting or you're the one?
Hello? Is Prof trying to reconnect? But first we have lost signals here. I guess he's trying to reconnect to return the meeting. Hello? While we are waiting for Prof,
Okay.
If your picture should vanish, you don't start rating reappearing.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
Hello.
Am I on?
Yes, you are on. It's on. I can hear him now.
Can you hear me?
Yes. If I want to put up, yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you, Prof.
You can hear me, okay.
I can hear you. I can hear
All
you.
right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to start by congratulating Dr. Ogato, who has earned the support, strong support of UNIPEN's management, the Vice Chancellor and the Dean of the Faculty, who is in fact participating as a discussant. Congratulations to you, Dr. Ogato. My take on the longish topic is a shorter title for my presentation, and it is Federal Character and Meritocracy, Desirable Mix for Achieving Improved Development Performance. I'm aware I have 45 minutes. I can even do with 40, given the hiccup we had. I'll start with a quote from the Vice President that summarizes the core of my message. And I quote, "A value system rewards talent and enterprise, and it is talent and enterprise that will drive sustainable growth." I need to make this point because time and time again, we get arguments around whether the appointment of persons into public institutions should be based on federal character. The dominant principle should be merit. Federal character is essentially affirmative to create a balance, what the organizer called representative public service. But even if it were to create that balance, it should still be based on merit. I begin my presentation with a brief recall
of Nigeria's experience with the primacy of the merit principle in the past, with particular reference to the country's civil service. The positive results recorded are highlighted. Next, I provide an overview of Nigeria's experience with the subordination of the merit principle to the federal character principle since the return to civilian rule in 1999, with particular attention to the civil services. The negative consequences are also highlighted. I conclude with some observations on the strong linkage between the primacy of the merit principle and good development performance, with some international illustrations. Nigeria's past experience, 1954 to 1965, primacy of the merit principle and positive results. The following assessment of Nigeria's civil services about 11 years after they were established in 1954, a federal civil service and 3 regional civil services, a 4th was added in 1963, highlights crude politics as a factor that undermines the merit principle, and efficiency standards as a consequence of the respect for the merit principle. And I quote, "Civil services that are for the most part recruited on merit, that are geared to efficiency standards, and that are largely untouched by crude politics." This quote is from the Nigerian Opinion, a University of Ibadan-based public affairs magazine published in 1965. The quality federal and regional public civil services praised in the above quote must have contributed hugely to the country's low poverty level, estimated at about 25% in the mid-1960s. A few years earlier, the Western Nigeria Regional Civil Service was highly commended by the regional premier in his valedictory speech in Parliament at the end of his tenure in December 1959. And I quote, "Our civil service is exceedingly efficient, absolutely incorruptible in its upper stratum, and utterly devoted and unstinting in the discharge of its many onerous duties. For our civil servants, government workers, and laborers to bear uncomplainingly and without breaking down the heavy and multifarious burdens with which we have, in the interest of the public, saddled them is an epic of loyalty and devotion, of physical and mental endurance, and a sense of mission on their part. From the bottom of my heart, I salute all of them." Obafemi Awolowo in his autobiography, Awo, published in 1960. It is important to stress that the premier specifically mentioned the ability of the Western Nigeria Civil Service to discharge many onerous duties, heavy and multifarious burdens in the interest of the public. The following are some illustrations of the positive results that had been recorded by 1959. Giant strides in the fields of agriculture, education, health, housing, transportation, industrial development, and communication. The most notable of these achievements was the introduction and successful implementation of the first in Africa universal primary education, launched in January 1955. The speaker was one of the first beneficiaries of the Western Nigeria UPE. That was my final year in primary school. All these region-wide development activities were effectively implemented by civil servants through the time of the 1965 praise and for a decade or so longer. and the overall quality performance of the central and regional civil services contributed hugely to keeping the poverty level in the country low up to the mid-1960s, as already stated. Nigerian experience since 1999, the emphasis of the merit principle and negative consequences. The emphasis of the merit principle in public service recruitment was inherited from the departing military regime by the incoming civilian administration in 1999. To date, no serious effort has been made to return to the merit-based civil services of the mid-1960s, either at the federal level or at the subnational level. A few exceptions at the subnational level have not been maintained over a sufficient time period to ensure sustainability. Strikingly too, successive governments at the central and subnational levels, almost without exception, have consistently cited the weak implementation capacity of their public services as a major explanatory factor for the limited positive results from their development policies and programs. That is, for poor service delivery, or if you like, for mediocre service delivery. As correctly flagged by Vice President Osinbajo, it is the federal character principle that has become the dominant criterion for appointments into public institutions, including the public services. As defined in the 1979 Constitution and maintained in the 1999 Constitution. Somebody suggested some of us talk about these constitutions without reading them. I hope somebody will communicate to, what do you call it, presidency in Abuja, that no academic refers to any constitution without having read it. Because I'm one of those implied in the criticism of people not reading constitutions. In those two constitutions, the federal character principle is intended to ensure that Nigeria's diversity is accommodated in appointments into both political offices and public service offices. With specific reference to public civil services, almost every modern state in the world seeks to assure some degree of representation of geographical, class, ethnic, communal, religious, gender, and other such interests. These considerations are commonly summed up as the principle of representativeness, which is the word used in the of this discourse. However, countries that seek to ensure well-performing public services subordinate considerations of representativeness to the primacy of the merit principle. Significantly, the subordination of the merit principle to the federal character principle is made worse by the fact that no guidelines, to my knowledge, have ever been provided for its application as far as public services are concerned. I worked on the federal civil service for over some 3-5 years. I didn't come across any guidelines. Maybe they were recently introduced that I've not seen. Consequently, federal character is sometimes or oftentimes interpreted as a crude quota patronage system, and it is unclear whether states or geopolitical zones are used for determining quotas. Overall, its application has had negative consequences for public service performance. I will argue that there is a strong linkage between the country's low to mediocre scores on most instruments of governance performance today. In particular, Nigeria as the poverty capital of the world since 2018, and public services that have been weakened by the de-emphasis of the merit principle. I go to my conclusion. Primacy of the merit principle and good development performance. As used here, development performance refers specifically to a country's progress in growing its economy, reducing poverty, assuring security, and moving towards prosperity for all its citizens. In this concluding section, I provide evidence in support of the following proposition. Countries that uphold the primacy of the merit principle in appointments into public services tend to record good development performance. I want to repeat that. That's the proposition of my conclusion. Countries that uphold the primacy of the merit principle in appointments into public services tend to record good development performance. Without question, the merit-based Western Nigeria Regional Civil Service that was praised by the regional political leader ensured good development performance as highlighted earlier in this presentation. Although this was only a subnational government, it is appropriate to include it as part of the evidence in support of the propositions stated above. Botswana in Africa, France in Europe, and Singapore in Asia are three examples of countries with merit-based public services that recorded good development performance at specific historical periods. Botswana's civil service has been acknowledged by both its political leaders and outside observers, including this speaker, as one of the key factors that made it possible for that country to emerge as one of only 13 countries worldwide that recorded sustained high growth, 7% and above, for 25 years or longer during the second half of the 20th century. This is based on the Commission on Growth and Development, a publication released in 2008. Regarding France, the impressive recovery of the country from the devastations of the Second World War within a decade, between 1946 and the mid-1950s, is widely attributed to the country's civil service with a critical mass of technocrats, technical and administrative professionals.
I give you a right to make you find out. You see this one, inside library. You know the only one I will see. We only see this one, we don't see the other one. Now two. Okay, now two like this to give me. One, the one not be letter-headed. One and plain.
Can you hear me?
We can hear.
Okay, I continue. And in the case of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, a former prime minister, highlights the contribution of the civil service in the country's rise from third to first world. And in 2008, the country's prime minister, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, asserted that Singapore's civil service has remained critical to the country's good development performance. And I quote, "Singapore's public service is our most sustainable competitive advantage. The investments in Singapore's future are only realizable with a first-class public service." Given the evidence provided above, including one that is homegrown, any political leadership in Nigeria at the central or subnational level that would like to record good development performance, similar to those highlighted in the preceding paragraphs, must commit to upholding the primacy of the merit principle in making appointments into its public services. I thank you all for your attention.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
We want to thank you, Prof. We want to thank you for the exposition you have just given And the bottom line, as you have said, is the merit principle. Maybe when we get to question and answer session, you come back on the podium to explain some of the dicey issues, especially with a plural society such as Nigeria. How do we go about having a representative bureaucracy that can both satisfy the merit principle as well as the fact that we need to take care of every segment of the society? You want to say something about that while Professor Lakwa is preparing to take on from there?
No, I think it's better to go on to the discussions. I make a note of what you've said. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Prof. Thank you. So, Professor Tunji Olakwa.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Can hear you, Prof.
Okay, thank you. Let me start by paying my respect to our elder statesman, my teacher, PhD Professor Professor Oladipo Adamalekun, NNOM. I'd like to extend that to the irrepressible Vice Chancellor University of Benin, Professor Lilian Salami, through Dr. Gato, and to my revered friend, Professor Austin Wikelebe. Now, Professor Adamalekun has helped us to unbundle our topic, so it's easier. Indeed, the federal character policy is obviously implicated in this conversation. And I'd like to locate the context of the federal character policy in the character of the Nigerian state and the instrumental role that the bureaucracy had assumed from colonial era to the present, and indeed the means and tool for political intervention in the economy and in society. Consequently, there is a political economy dimension to diversity management in Nigerian public service. In spite of the pre-independent nationalization policy and low representation of Nigerians in the officers' cadre, the northern region really could not meet their quota in the accelerated influx of Nigeria into the civil service as at independence. Consequently, a major defining issue in Nigerian national question had to do with the politics of northern domination of the political space and the southern intellectuals and professional domination of the public administration space. And really what hegemonic hold and domination could be achieved if a competing group dominates policy making and another takes responsibility for implementation. Consequently, the Nigerian diversity management invention allow federal character policy, which in some sense is a commendable innovation for diversity management, was a political solution and a governance imperative which had politics as its independent variable and delivery of public good as a dependent variable. And that point has to be understood in order for us to adequately explain the extent to which the policy had politicized the professionalism of public administration and distorted the potential of meritocracy in the service. I think to say that for any organization to achieve success in service delivery, the quality and professionalism of its human resources and efficient management is key, is a very obvious point. We can then take that further by saying that there is a causal relationship between diversity management, low productivity in the national economy, and efficient service delivery. In other words, if it is the case that the recruitment and selection process of the workforce lack equity and transparency, it will be difficult, if not impossible, to recruit the best qualified applicants for available jobs. It is therefore a logical consequence of a deformed human resource management process that federal character had caused recruitment and selection process in the civil service to be weighed down by favoritism thus shifting the process from qualification of individuals based on job description to subjective rather than objective selection parameters. A distorted recruitment process and selection procedure in turn impact negatively on confirmation, deployment, performance appraisal, promotion reward management, with strong implication for workers' productivity and service delivery. On some positive side, and in some sense, it might be argued that federal character has increased national integration, as many ethnic groups can be seen working in the federal establishment in various parts of the country, but that gain is at a huge opportunity cost, insofar as the policy has been found to inhibit workers' productivity and reduce workers' morale as a result of recruitment of incompetent and inefficient workers. And the theory of labor productivity is the theory of national development. So how does the federal character play out in practice? The point cannot be overemphasized that an effective public service is essential to socioeconomic well-being of the country, especially an emerging economy like Nigeria. It is indeed a prerequisite for a well-developed and effective private sector that must be the engine of growth of the economy. I think it was Peter Eke in 1989 who argued that the federal character policy, quote, has invaded integrity and standards of public bureaucracy as well as other governmental bodies that normally require some protection against the vagaries of politics, unquote. Indeed, the arbitrariness that seems to accompany the application and lack of political will to employ sanctions when the rules are breached has been a source of worry to observers. Besides, there is a virtual, like Professor Adamulekun observed, there is a virtual lack of a definite guideline in achieving balance between equity and efficiency in its application. Furthermore, the policy does not encourage treatment of public officials as Nigerians, as they are viewed from the lenses of ethno-linguistic group rather than of the nation state, thereby creating a multiple system of citizenship in the polity. The policy invariably sets out to achieve equality of all states of the federation, whereas states are not equal. Rather, neither had a pool of qualified candidates eligible for recruitment the same. The overall effect, according to Tonwen and Ogato, is that, quote, federal character allows ethno-regional patrons and their clients to exploit and mismanage state resources without contributing to anything meaningful, to any meaningful development, unquote. So rather than see the federal character policy as an incentive for human capital development, it is seen as an equalizer that ensures proportional absorption into federal institutions, Subaru 2001. With capacity development taken out of focus, it became an issue of how other ethno-linguistic groups with better educational achievement must be brought down to the same level as the disadvantaged ones for fairness and equity to prevail. The implication is that over the years, the distorted implementation of policy, such as transfer from state to field federal quota, has assumed the dominant channel for recruitment into the federal civil service. Through transfers from states and dumping of staff of ad hoc bodies on the mainstream service, prolonged embargo on fresh appointment became inescapable. The arbitrariness of this whole process had meant that the public services internal control mechanism like manpower forecasting and planning, treasury and management control, organizational method, annual personnel audit, succession planning that manage, anticipate, and control the goal of the service had over the years broken down. In other words, with filling of quota as overriding concern, systematic planning for short-term manpower needs, along the forecasting of retirement attrition rates, anticipated vacancy, and projected new position based on programmatic requirement became subordinated. Consequently, manpower planning and forecasting are done only as part of annual budgeting process. Staff increases are thus equated directly to budget allocation rather than discussed in terms of the addition of staff as a result of new corporate roles, new needs for analytical skills, or to make up for certain skills area. This whole dynamics will transfer from state to gain ethnic advantage and consolidate a hegemonic hold on the nation states as overriding strategy will later create promotional block and stagnation for core officers who really grew up in the service. And the succession planning dynamics already distorted. The growth in size of the service could no more be managed. Indeed, it also created the phenomenon of ghost workers through which public funds were siphoned with impunity. It therefore became very difficult to determine number of workers on payroll. And this is one of the tap roots of overbloatedness of the service. It in turn disconnected wages and compensation from productivity trajectory of the national economy, making it practically impossible to implement significant wage increases based on relativity indices. Another, with other sectors of the economy, especially, and also compensable factors. Indeed, the Shonekan consolidated wage reform, which would have been almost like, a reform solution, could not be implemented to rectify the unrewarding pay structure because it requires MDA's restructuring, job evaluation, and right sizing as constitution precedent. This has in turn conditioned the theory of change of public service reform in Nigeria, while at once institutionalizing an adversarial militancy-prepared industrial relations, which had over the years foreclosed the chances of a technical rational model to reform, to reform and transformation of the public administration system. Going forward, reviving a viable professional body for public administration and management in Nigeria through revitalization of NAPAM will be key, as this will provide a platform to harness ideas and insights about the current state of the service from a community of practice and of service, advantage on how to move it beyond its present debilitating dysfunction. To make better sense of the dysfunctional representative bureaucratic model for diversity management will require the emergence of a new generation of cosmopolitan, detribalized, knowledge-prepared, and reform-minded professionals who are at once transformational public managers, supported by a core professional HR managers who will take on the challenge at both its conceptual and administrative levels. And such a new core public managers will be armed with new philosophical and value foundation, managed with competencies underpinned by new intellectual concepts and paradigms. This will entail development of a new public service leadership model that reflects the methodology for the envisioned change. And such a model will require the development of distinctive administrative leadership competence to reinvent the civil service into a self-motivated and depoliticized category. At the end of the day, the desired change will begin only because the political leadership has resolved that enough is enough. This will in turn require political sophistication and a seminar spirit matched with an adequate dose of political will and a full recognition that if public administration fails, all else fails. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor Tunji Alawa. You will all agree with me that he has brought to bear the very sound knowledge of the practicalities of the public service, because he has been there in most of those reforms, as well as the scholarly aspect of it. The issue of NAPAM, which we just briefly talked about, I think we have been serious. Will once again galvanize us into ensuring that the National Association of Public Administration and Management, right, because the Committee of Public Administration Organization, I think you will do well to assist us, because our father, Professor Ademoleku, will not be as agile anymore to pilot the affairs of that body. But I think that will be part of what will arrive at the end of this exercise. Once again, I want to thank you so much. I think questions will also be there for you to respond to very briefly at the end of the last presentation. So I enjoin all participants to pencil down their questions or their views or issues to take us to the next level so that so at this point, ladies and gentlemen, I now call on Professor Austin Kelebe. Incidentally, his video was not showing earlier. I hope that has been taken care of. Professor Kelebe, are you there? Hello, please unmute yourself and the floor is yours. Hello, unmute yourself. Yes, the floor is yours. You are welcome. We are hearing you, Prof. The floor is yours. We are hearing you. Hello? Hello?
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
We are hearing
We are
you.
hearing you. Unmute your microphone.
The picture, we are not seeing it.
Video, I'm sure it's
Uniben's network bandwidth is
We can't hear me. We can't hear. I'm not hearing. No.
you say you get on it.
It's low. That's what they wrote.
It's slow.
Uniben's network bandwidth is low.
Hello, Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
It's a funny case, isn't it?
Yeah. While we are still for Prof to come, I want to
I want
thank
to thank people that have just joined in. Professor
just
D.
joined in,
Samuel,
Professor D,
Head of Department
of
Public Administration,
Public
University of
Administration.
In fact,
In fact,
last year we
last
have
year,
a collaboration,
collaboration,
hosting an event.
hosting an event such as this. So, yes, I'm here. Hello. Wow.
It's network. You see this webinars from India. To be as clear as anything.
This one.
I said from India.
That's what they are committing.
No. I said if you watch the webinar, the one they do in India, very, very fine.
Hello. 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 We are having network problems.
Your ICT man at Bola. The ICT man, maybe you can tell me.
Prof. Yes. We are not hearing you. We are not hearing you. Yes. On your okay. Come back. We'll come back. All right. But you tap on your audio. Okay. All right. Okay. Hello. Maybe one. Maybe we can. Maybe one. Let's take Thank you. Hello? Hello?
Hello.
Hello? Please, any comments?
Yeah.
The floor is open for comments. Or additional thoughts by the presenters so far. Hello? Hello?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah?
Hello? Yeah, can we go on now?
Have the floor, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, no. Because the noise is has not been addressed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Professor Obasi, we can hear you.
Okay, right. I wish to commend our key speaker, our daddy in the field, and also to thank Professor Lokwa for bringing his perspective. These facts are true. What Prof. Demolaku said, we can't controvert it. It's an eternal truth. But the present Nigerian public service, which Professor Olakwa left some years ago, has completely changed. Whether we even recruit by merit, or that whether they can achieve what Professor Demolaku, presented as a major proposition, which is validated by empirical evidence across the world. Professor Olakwa knows very well that in the public service, it's just wait for your turn. Those who have been recruited either by merit or whatever, they behave exactly the same way. There is no difference. They behave exactly the same way. And all they do is just think about how to settle themselves and tell the other ones to wait for their turn. I don't think whether the political will can even drive anything. It's both the political and the bureaucratic will. I like Professor Olakwa's conclusion. Yes, there has to be the political side giving the direction, but also the orientation of the public servants must have to change. I remember those years. My revered teacher, Professor Onyediro, will ask, from where are these people coming to man the local government? They're coming from heaven. Where are they coming from? I think Nigeria needs to be redeemed. And part of it is what Professor Adamolak has been preaching. I'm glad Professor Wole Soyinka repeated the right way and admitted that he's not the first person saying it. Professor Adamolak has been saying time with a number over the years, if we don't restructure, we will die. Nigeria will die. There's no alternative to it. It is by then that changes can be coming. Look at what is happening in Akwa Ibom State. Look at what is happening in Rivers State. Let me just use those two states. For instance, if the subnational governments are given opportunity, things will take shape. We just mess around by this federal system that is not working. And we think and hope that things will change. From my experience, since I've been observing the service in Abuja here over 10 years ago, is simply that nothing will change. Even by the same merit, Prof. Ademolako has done a lot to help to install. It didn't fly. But even those people, if they had come, the best of the best, have been in the system and joined with what the culture is presently, we are going nowhere. Nigeria needs to restructure, and let's find a new orientation, which Professor Olokwa's dream will come, but it can't come at the federal level the way we are seeing it now. It may start at the subnational level, and which goes to support the thesis of Professor Ademolako that the old Western region, everybody saw it, did actually very well. And the East followed. There was that competition among the regions, and we have to go back to it. Nigeria has no choice about this. Thank you very much. Was I communicating? Hello?
Loud and clear.
Yes, we heard you clearly.
We heard you clearly.
Very clear.
Thank you.
Okay, unmute. Okay. Any other contribution? Yes. More contributions? Are we expecting more?
Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this opportunity to thank the Institute of Public Administration and Extension Services for this exposure on administrative realities of our time. Let me appreciate the contributors, our elders that have made themselves available. We have benefited from your wealth of experience. Let me also congratulate our dear acting director for putting this webinar together, and your entire staff that have made it possible. Most especially, let us appreciate our Vice Chancellor that has provided the atmosphere, a very peaceful and beautiful atmosphere that encourage this type of academic discourse. And may we also appreciate our good Lord that made today possible in our lives. May all the glory, honor, and adoration of today's events be the Lord's, while the blessings will be ours.
Amen.
Thank you very much, everyone present.
Thank you.
And we hope that this sort of thing will be carried out again. I have been particularly blessed and I've benefited on your management issues. Those of us in educational management, we borrow a lot of things from those of you in business, health, and other management disciplines. Thank you very much for hosting, and have a blessed week.
Okay, the Federal Character Commission representative is trying to link up. So let's just give him the next 2 minutes to link up. Then we'll continue with the program before we round up. But in the meantime, may I call on Professor D.A. Tonwe to make a statement? Oh, Professor Kelegbe appears to be coming on stream. Hello, sir. Professor Kelegbe, are you able to
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me now? Can you hear?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Hear you.
Okay. So I was saying that we have to look at the ecology of the Nigerian public bureaucracy, and that we live in a society that is becoming increasingly divided and where almost everything is politicized. We live in a society where there are diverse perceptions which are contingent on identity and identity mobilization and solidarization. And so there are implications of this for the nature of the Nigerian public bureaucracy. We find a situation where accommodation of diversity is being weakened. We find a situation where the forces of domination and marginality are heightening. Professor Olakpa alluded to this. The forces of domination and marginality are heightening and are becoming also more increasingly politicized. So we also therefore have a public bureaucracy that is increasingly getting divided in terms of perceptions, in terms of attitudes, in terms of opinion, in terms of even the actions that they take. Now, if we see Nigeria's bureaucracy are suffering from all these problems, the next question I want to ask, was it always like this? I know people like Professor Adam Oleku have talked about the colonial bureaucracy, the level of efficiency of the immediate post-colonial bureaucracy in Nigeria, particularly, in fact, in all the regions, the level of efficiency, the kind of traditions, the record of the history and the attitudes that were ingrained in the Nigerian public servants of that period. We had seasoned professional civil servants who undertook their jobs from the perspective of merit, equity, justice, name it. That was the tradition that we had. But the military came in, and then all kinds of things also came in. And increasingly, the public service has shifted from that mode of a professional, highly traditioned public bureaucracy that we had at that period. Yes, I want to say that it is true that certain structures have been put in place, and Professor Lakpa mentioned this quite visibly in terms of the quota system, the federal character system, the commission system, and all that. But we need to critically assess this. We need to critically assess this in relation, one, to the level of implementation, the quality of implementation, and the outcomes of these structures that have been put in place to ensure diversity management and representation in the Nigerian public service. And I want to also raise certain questions arising therefrom, because we have identified, and I think just one or two other speakers have raised that, we have identified weaknesses that have become part of the Nigerian public administration as a result of the implementation, the nature of implementation of some of these new structures of accommodation and a pluralism that have been put in place. Several scholars have mentioned the effects on merit, the effects of standards, the effects on competence, which have been hugely undermined. Scholars have also mentioned the effects on achievement, the effects on results, the effects on the quality of public administration, the effects on productivity, the effects on performance, and even the effects on the integrity and confidence of both the public service and the attitude and perceptions of the people, the citizens, to the public service. So there are huge weaknesses. And that leads us to critical assessment of these instruments in terms of their effect on the management of diversity and representation. I want to ask several questions. One, does Quota and Federal Character Commission, does it actually equate to representation and diversity management and integration in the Nigeria's public service? if you look at the character and nature of implementation of these institutions, you find that they may not actually be ensuring diversity and representation, particularly at the higher rungs of the public service. You see, entry point is not equal to representation at higher levels, at the higher rungs of the public service. The nature of the Nigerian political system has meant that promotion, posting, and all kinds of facilities that are available to the public service have been politicized. All kinds of factors have come in. So at the higher rung, there's very little representation. The people that are coming are not the ones that necessarily rise to the top. And so you find that there's actually very little representation at the top. And particularly in critical sectors of the public service, representation has been weakened by the nature of implementation of some of these institutions. Then we know how has the Federal Character Commission actually affected representation? This, again, is a question we need to investigate, because there are numerous issues of domination of several public service institutions by certain groups, by certain ethnic groups, by certain regions. The Federal Character Commission has not been able to manage this. And then there's another question I want to raise. Does quota, for example, and the federal character, does it reflect democratic representation? Does it have demographic characteristics of the population? For example, how does it affect representation in terms of gender? These issues have not been addressed by the existing institutions that have been put in place to promote the representation and diversity. The other issue I want to raise is this. These institutions, have they actually, the effort so far resulted in broad representation of aspirations and opinions? Has it reflected in the democratic, bureaucratic outcomes of the public service? Have they reflected even in the attitude of the public service to the population or to different segments of the population? I want to remark that sometimes it's not mere representation that we should be talking about, but we should be talking about the orientations, the traditions, the sensitizations, the level of professionalism, the level of induction of public bureaucrats. Going back, I mentioned that in the immediate post-independence era, the public service had traditions, had quality, had professionalism. And the issues of lack of representation did not arise because they did their work professionally. Now we have all these institutions, but yet our public bureaucracies are not being run professionally and are not reflecting the opinion, the aspirations of the population. So we need to raise several questions. Does recruitment, for example, does it equate? So you can have representation at the point of recruitment, but does it equate to representation at other levels of the public service? These are critical issues that we need to raise. And what is the way forward for me? The way forward is that the implement figure must be strengthened. Otherwise, we'll continue to have the situation where these institutions exist, but if representation and diversity management is not actually taking place. Then we need to move on to organizational development. We need to move on to organizational development through professionalism, through merit, through building on old traditions in the public service. Even the public service that was bequeathed to us at independence, we need to go back to some of those values of bureaucrats at that time. Otherwise, we'll keep on running around the same issues and they're not actually achieving representation and diversity management in the Nigerian public service. I want to predict that given the way Nigeria is going, given the level of deepening of fault lines, the level of even emerging hostility to one another, the deepening of the crisis of nationhood, the crisis of the national question, given these issues, the public service will continue to have challenges in terms of being able to reflect the aspirations and opinion of the people of Nigeria. Thank you very much. I want to end my submission here.
Do you mind if I come in?
Yes.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
I think
yes.
I think a whole range of issues have been raised, and I hope our teacher, Professor Adamilekun, is still around to moderate or referee the conversation. Now, like has been said, merit is critical, but
Hello, I think I should be the first to respond.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Because I was asked to be making comments and I said, let the others talk. So I think the main speaker should come in first. If there's a structure, but I noticed that Professor Lakwa has respected the protocol. We are not doing, what do you call it, COVID-19 protocol. This is academic discourse protocol. My presentation was brief and I'm delighted that the issues raised. The broad issue raised immediately I concluded was how can Nigeria achieve a combination of primacy of merit system with adequate attention to representation? I think that's a very good statement of the problem. And through Professor Laokwa, Professor Bassi, and Professor Ikelebe, some answers have been given to that question. So I won't pretend that I have definitive answer, but I have some suggestions. I can give you the example of a subnational level Ekiti State, where I participated in their civil service transformation strategy that was read from cover to cover by the governor, which then ensured the political will, the political leadership that Professor Laokwa mentioned. And in that document, it is stated that when you are beginning your recruitment, 80% of the totality of those you want to recruit should be strictly on merit. That's at a state level. At the federal, it may not be possible, but I'm just giving the example of a state level where actually something has been done and written down as government position, and 20% on representativeness. That's just an idea thrown out there, but that state actually tried to implement it. The way they tried to implement it was to start from the top. Head of service was selected through an open competition of the most senior civil servants, written exam, structured interview, and the best person was appointed transparently. All permanent secretaries serving and those directors senior enough were all pulled together. Again, written examination, interview, and the best selected. This is extremely important information. It turned out that the top 10, there were 4 or 5 women in the top 10. So the gender thing that Professor Ikelebe mentioned took care of itself. By the time all the, the full component was selected, I think there was a local government area that had 2 or 3 permanent secretaries, and people then wondered what was going to happen. But it then happened through that process. Of course, this is Ekiti State where you have professors in almost every household, However, it turned out that every local government was represented without diluting it. I do not recommend that for all states, not to talk of federal level. I'm just giving it as an example of a real life situation. Of course, sustainability is the issue for Ekiti State, because after the 4 years of the governor who did that, things changed and it has not been sustained. And I can't go into the details of what is happening now. At the federal level, what is lacking, at least elementary, what are the guidelines for implementing federal character in the public service? India, Canada provide some examples of, for instance, in India, there are certain positions, I think is space energy, space specialists, some specializations that you do not compromise merit. You want somebody who can fly, who is just learning how to fly your aeroplane. So then there should be some guidelines of areas that are exclusively merit. However, I'm putting out there, India, Canada, provide some examples.
Now we can continue with our work.
Now,
It's not 2 hours.
for the federal level, I think when we were doing the National Public Service Transformation Strategy, we tried to say at entry, make the competition open, transparent. And once you've seen the results, we didn't say T20 like Ekiti, but at least ensure both representation and respect for merit. But once you have admitted people and you are sure of that representation, their progress through should be on professionalism, on competence to deliver results, and so on. But of course, that strategy was never really adopted. I go to Professor Olakwa's suggestion about Nigerian Association of Public Administration and Management, and I think Dr. Ogato is one of the proponents. In countries that make progress with quality public administration, it helps. And one of the features of that kind of organization is a professional journal. Dr. Ogato, something is missing. There are no senior civil servants, at least that I can see here. At least there ought to have been some heads of services in our days at IFE. We do not organize this kind of discourse just for academics. We always invited public officers from federal and state levels. So that is missing. So if you are going to revive that organization, as Professor Olakwa correctly mentioned, it should be a mix of both the academics and the professionals, which this discourse has not achieved. And then I mentioned the point of a professional journal. Next, I think finally, Professor Kelebe raised a number of interesting issues on which I have some clear positions. He asks, what is the role of the Federal Character Commission? I've written elsewhere, and I will repeat here, that institution is superfluous. It does not need to exist. Because if the Constitution stipulates reflecting federal character, why would the Federal Civil Service Commission not reflect it? So when we were working on national strategy, we saw this conflict between the Federal Character Commission and Civil Service Commission. Civil Service Commission told Federal Character Commission, you cannot be supervising what we are doing because we are obliged to reflect federal character in the Constitution, but within the parameters of our own rules and guidelines. So that conflict, whoever participated in that exercise, Dr. Olakwa was there, that conflict was there. I'm sure today it has not been resolved. So Professor Ikelebe, you're absolutely right. I'm a witness to the conflict between Federal Civil Service Commission and Federal Character Commission, and my position supports Federal Civil Commission. This one is superfluous. Under Abacha, did they say Federal Character Commission should ensure a federal character of industries, of everything? You go and read the Constitution. The gentleman who said some people don't read it. I've read that, and I'm sure many of you have read it. There's no way Federal Character Commission can perform. Professor Kelebe, thanks for bringing that up. So my clear recommendation on that is simply abolish. I mean, we want to cut down the cost of governance. Remove that outfit. But of course, whether it will happen is a different thing. Next, you mentioned if they reduce federal character to quota. Where is gender? That's what you said. Because countries that talk about representativeness bring in all the components of diversity, gender, disability, if you like, intergenerational, all of those things are brought in. But federal character is only states. So you don't even know whether it's geopolitical zones. Well, the only thing they've not brought in openly, openly, at least in the public service, is ethnic groups. I didn't hear them. When I was in Abuja working with them, they didn't bring up ethnic groups. They brought up geopolitical zones and states. Finally, and you are spot on. The way we are implementing federal character and not really pay. Oh, I almost forgot. The primacy of merit system in America, there's a merit protection agency. In Nigeria, what we have? Federal character protection, nothing to protect merit, you know. So you said what we have in Nigeria is
Want to submit it?
So far, representation achieved questionable. Professionalism
bring it on Friday, simple.
Hugely undermined.
From 12
So I will simply end by saying my submission about abolishing the Federal Character Commission. I'm ready to take on whoever, or rather the opposite views. I hope the Federal Character Commission man can come in if he's available. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the man is around.
Yeah. Thank you, Prof. Yes. Federal Character Commission, are you there? Are you there? The representative of the chairman, Federal Character Commission. Okay. Probably still trying to.
Do I come in there?
So, Professor Tunji Olakwa.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm happy that Professor Adamalekun came in first. Now, the point for me is that, yes, merit is very critical, but given some structural and systemic dimension to the dysfunction of the public service, I'd argued elsewhere that even if the likes of Albert Einstein are brought into the current public service, they will be incapacitated. So, but Professor Adamalekun himself has done a helpful research in 2005 where he categorized and described Nigeria as hesitant reformer. And that point has to be noted in understanding the structural and systemic dysfunction. The public service in Nigeria is
Hello, I hope we have not lost Prof. Hello? Hello?
in the old bureaucratic world, almost the entire 80s, to institutionalize performance. In the military, the segment of the old
Let me minimize. Cannot be minimized.
Hello?
I like that man's contribution, the chief speaker, Ademolako.
Go ahead.
Network.
I mean, the new or performance-driven professional development is still based on federal character. But in the military, you can come into a lot of, but for you to cross above major, staff their training is, and some come to NIPS where I teach now. No matter how influential you are as a military in NIPS, the caliber of faculty is such that cannot be corrupted. Your rating is very confidential. So, but we don't have that much. There is also the macroeconomic imperative to redefine the role of the state as engine of to empower this private sector as the engine of growth in the economy. These dynamics have been used by the likes of these Asians, Singapore, that was Adamalekun, Malaysia, to institutionalize what is called a public-private sector incorporated. So what happens is that you can really in Singapore and Malaysia not draw a difference between the private sector and the public sector. And they move across the cadre. They attend the same training, they attend that. So if you find yourself in the public service in a corrupted procedure, you yourself know that you may not be able to survive that system. The other thing is that the managerial tradition or paradigm has compared the public service to build an entrepreneurial culture. So we are talking of public sector is more concerned about return on investment, public-private partnership, project and risk management, knowledge management, and all of those. So, I mean, that's compelling the public service to really work more in partnership with the industry because those are skills. The other point I'd like to bring on the table is that even in the public service, I worked closely with Mr. Stephen Oransai and Professor Oladapo Afolabi. Yes, whether character determines appointment of permanent secretary. It's one per state. But under those very knowledge and professional, head, by which I'm making the point that also administrative leadership sophistication and commitment to professionalism will be core. I was part of a selection process of permanent secretaries while I was permanent secretary, where about 3 states for almost 2 years running couldn't appoint permanent secretary for them. Because we did assessment of all their directors, we just felt that they were not fit to be permanent secretary. And we put our feet down. And what it did was we wrote to the state. And in some cases, the state now had to look at all their public sector agencies to bring high-rated technocrats who are also taking through assessment. Some were taken, some were, perhaps appointed as directors so that they could grow in the system. The other point to make is that in Nigeria today, we have surpassed the thinking and the degenerate thinking that led to the kind of politicized federal character that we have now. There is no state in the country, if the skills and staffing requirement of civil services are determined, and if gatekeeping is done to ensure that there is no politicization, there is no state that cannot, even if they cannot provide all the competencies. I have had situation of assessing people from those states that you might call very backward, and you will find very incredible talents in the public service. There is virtually none today that cannot. It's just that there is this mindset that politicians can always have their way. And so we need a measure of political sophistication and concession to national development. And of course, a reformed competency framework that benchmark the minimum skills and competency requirement in the civil service, below which no officer entering the service should be able to go. So, so that would then compel states to invest in human capital, development in order to be able to meet the competency and skills requirement of the civil service. So whoever gets into the service must then, at that point, submit him or herself to reformed performance appraisal metrics and performance management system. You must be able to survive. In the military, no matter who your background is, if you cannot make progress, you are stagnated at the level of major. There are some, those who become general. Of course, we have exceptions where it is corrupted. Professional gatekeeping would then be key, and that's why NAPAM, we all must work to get the public service to have a proper professional association. It then means that there must be professional association that enforce standard, that enforce ethics in the public service. And there are standard public service values that needs to be enforced. But in all of this, 2 things will be very key. And I'd like to allude in concluding this winding up. I like to always refer to the UK example when UK logged into managerialism under Thatcher. She came in 79, she struggled with the public service. Ultimately, I think in 1980 or 81, she then put her feet down, invited Lorena, who was then the chairman, CEO of Marks and Spencer, and said, listen, there is a civil service here that will not make Britain to make progress. I need to get a handle on it. Reina came in, assembled virtually all the leading political or public administration scholars, technocrats, and retired, bureaucrats who are really knowledgeable, and they came up with a framework for changing the public service of UK. So the point I'm making there, this whole thing about adversarial industrial relation, she faced it, maybe haven't been properly brought up and trained to be a politician. She was formerly in the parliament. She faced up to the Labour, and we recall that battle that hand her the Iron Lady. She forced amendment to the Labour law to make the public service to be, to become amenable to change. So the first issue in going forward is political sophistication, political will and determination to make the change to happen. Immediately that happens, it will determine the caliber of people that will be appointed, head of service, government, permanent secretary, directors, and the whole thing will calculate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Laokwa. Thank you so very much. I always said it, even at the initial statements I made, that the fact that you are a blend between practice and theory serves to enrich your knowledge and the knowledge of younger public administration scholars and practitioners. So I want to thank you so very much for that. A rep from Federal Character Commission, have you been able to link up? You can see that these whole discussions border on your operations.
He's the one that should speak now.
Yes. Are you able to join us? Because I sent the link a second time now. Not really, I think. Okay, it's not there yet. I'll still put a call through to him. But in the meantime, I thought this guy was raising. Professor Obasi, were you trying to say something?
No, I think
Okay.
Let's move ahead. I think it should be ending now. It's getting to 2 hours.
Okay. All right. Okay. Since we can't get him on, the bottom line, I dare to venture from all that we have said, is that we must get a professional body, a proper professional body in place. And that means resuscitating and revitalizing NAPAM. As Professor Laokwa has said, a proper body that can regulate the practice of public administration. I think that should be the bottom line, really. And I will enjoin all of us. So that will probably be the next thing to do. How do we strategize to get this body back? Because we have a number of public administrators. And the interesting thing is that we have been producing in our universities public administrators. Many have even become senior lecturers, but they never knew, they've never heard of NAPAM. Because there has been a lull in activities since our Baba left for international engagements many years ago. And he has been very active, even when we spoke in Abuja 2 years ago, that we need to get an institutional support for it. You recall, Professor Bassi, when we came for that 50 years, I came to that meeting with Professor Tonwi when we came to Abuja for that program. We also tried to do something, but unfortunately we couldn't get things going before COVID-19. So I think by way of a communique, at the end of this exercise, we must put everything on course to ensure that NAPAM gets on the front burner again, so that those of us who were there before, we can galvanize others and get the association back on course.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Somebody wants to say something? No, just close it. Okay. So at this point, we can never have enough. So it's going to be a continuing discourse. We are going to continue from here. And like I said, we do hope we will continue to have our institutional support here so that this in itself will be a yearly thing. And hopefully, as the COVID thing is gradually dissipating, I think we have to work towards having an in-person meeting, that's physical meetings too, to be supplemented by these virtual meetings. That will assist us. We hope that our country will become more secured so that we can travel the length and breadth of our country to galvanize people, because there's still no alternative really to in-person contact, really, you know, because many would have loved to join this discourse, but the network technology has not been perfected yet. So on this basis, I want to once again appreciate all of us for finding time. Professor Rosemary Olubo just will also help in re-emphasizing my appreciation to all of us. Most especially, we want to thank the Vice Chancellor of our university here for supporting this exercise. I want to thank our colleagues from other universities. Many people were invited, but as Professor Adamolokun said, the civil service is always so shy, the public service. We also try to invite them, but you see that up to this point in time, the guy from Federal Character Commission is here to hook on. And the head of service, I made very frantic efforts to get the head of service, federal head of service, Dr. Yemi Esan, on this program. But somewhere along the line, it didn't quite work out. But we'll keep trying. And I want to thank our father, Professor Adamolekun. We have always been talking on phone. I've not seen him for a very, very long time. I'm happy I'm seeing him in flesh and blood. And he's still very, very strong to give up his usual best. So I want to thank you so much, sir. Even though you are retired, but I know you are not tired, because the last time we were talking, little did we know that we were both in Abuja together, though we couldn't see. So I want to thank you. We'll come and visit you at Iju so that we will eat pounded yam and draw soup. Prof. Thank you so much. Professor Tunji Olapa, well, Ibadan is just around the corner here. So we're going to be seeing more of ourselves and discussing more so that we will keep moving and keep projecting the profession of public administration and governance, as it were. And my colleague, Professor Austin Kelebe, I want to thank you. Even at short notice and a very busy schedule, we were still able to. So when we went for this and director's meeting was when I just told him, I think about a week ago, about this. And only last week too, we were so busy organizing a faculty-based research uptake strategies and all that. So I want to thank you for also finding time to discuss the issue. It's an ongoing thing, so it's not going to end. We are going to have more sessions in future to embrace this whole idea of diversity management and all that, and, so that we can make the place a better place for the citizenry and then benefit from governance, as it were. To other participants, Professor Basi, my brother, I thank you so very much. Professor Adekeye, I don't know the institution. Please, can you just tell us something?
Mike Adeyeye.
You are welcome. So can you? Yes.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
Am I on?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Mike Adeyeye, Obafemi Awolowo University, Department of Local Government and Development Studies.
Okay, you are welcome. I remember
Professor Ladipo Adamolekun,
yes.
is my father.
Okay, yes. I remember you were the one to represent him last year when we were to have a program at the Department of Public Admin, but it didn't eventually happen.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Because Prof said he was not going to be in the country, and so that he was going to ask you to come. Thank you very much. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice seeing you.
This is a good initiative, and then I will also mobilize people in my department and the faculty to follow this initiative, and we'll be present whenever you invite us. We are grateful.
No. Thank you so much. We'll see you in Ife. I know Ife, the time Papa was there, was just the cradle of public administration. People like Professor Ronsaye, they were all there. They taught many years ago there. Then Professor Oseme, what's his name? Okay. He was also in Ife.
Okay.
Mr. Uga, yes. Thank you so very much for being there. I'm sure Professor Daniel Tonwe, you must say one or two things. We were in this together. So Professor Tonwe, over to you. Say one or two things.
Oh, yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, it has all been said. It's a wonderful initiative. Like you have said, we'll be happy if it continues so that we can continue to interact and benefit from the, if you like, from the wealth of experience of our father, Adam Alekun, who has done very well. And I also want to thank Professor Adeyeye too. He's in our constituency there. Incidentally, I'm in the area of local governance and grassroots activism. So I think it would be good to meet from time to time like this. Thank you very much.
Okay.
We appreciate this session.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Prof. Dr. Mrs. Yamu from the Institute, she is the director of the Institute of Education. She has been on this program with us since we started. I want to thank you for being around. Perhaps you want to say hi to our distinguished panelists.
My director, say something.
Okay, she's not on. Okay. Then Professor Tony Afemike, I can also see you on the attendance here. So you are most welcome, and thank you for, you see, the Faculty of Education, Public Admin, and everything, they are all intertwined.
Institute of Education.
Institute of Education, sorry. And like Professor Lubo said, those of them in educational management and administration, they draw inspiration from public administration as it were. So we are one and the same. The others I cannot see here. On a final note, I want once again to call on Professor Mrs. Lubo to say the final vote of thanks. There are not too many because it's not easy to pull all of us together.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam.
Yeah, finally, let us give all the glory to God. Let us thank Him for life and for the initiative to put this together. And we pray that next time the technology would have improved and we'll enjoy it better. We enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
And the next time, I assure you it will be better than this. Thank you, Director, for putting this together. We appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Prof.
Yes.
On that point, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I want to say have a blessed day as you go about your other things. Other networking will continue. And we'll continue to interact.
Yes.
Thank you and God bless.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Techno. Yeah, I was on yeah, sit down. I was on you don't come up, don't come now. You don't come how many times today? Yeah, sit down. I sent it to our platform. Yes. So I had to just report because the guy yes, that is a almost public administration person can say that it's alive and well. An old man, yeah. Very